So let me just introduce myself for those of you who this is your first time online with me. I'm Molly Gauthier. I've been involved with astrology in some way or other since about 1996. So that's a good long time now. So kind of embarrassingly long time now. And I've been watching the eclipses for that long. I really get a lot of enlightenment and a lot of kind of connection to the earth and to life through the lunar cycles. They inform a lot of my perspectives and help me kind of understand the cycles that I'm going through and the experiences that I'm going through. So I'm hoping that they'll kind of do the same for you too. Okay, you guys, the eclipse season is made up of eclipses are made up of lunations. Lunations are new moons and full moons. They happen when the moon reaches the same zodiac degree as the sun. That's a new moon, and it starts a new lunar cycle every month. When the moon reaches the halfway point and reaches the exact 180 point of the sun directly across the sky from the sun, that's a full moon. That's when the moon is fully illuminated. Now, there's a third factor in here, and that's the moon's nodes. The nodes are where the moon crosses the ecliptic, which is the plane of orbit of the sun and all the other planets. They all kind of stay in one pancake-shaped part of the sky relative to us here on Earth. But the moon rotates around the Earth at kind of an angle to that. And the places where those two there's two places where the moon's orbit crosses over the ecliptic, and those are called the moon's nodes. When there's a new moon or full moon within a certain proximity to the moon's nodes, within 18 degrees of the moon's nodes, we call that an eclipse. So that's the quick and dirty definition of what an eclipse is. So here's the picture of that on a chart. Can you all see my pointer? Yeah. You can see that on the chart here. There's the sun, the circle with the dot in it. There's the sun in Scorpio. That's November. And then here's the moon in Taurus, exactly opposite the sun over here in Taurus, and then close to the north node of the moon. This is the north node of the moon, and this here is the south node of the moon. So just to orient you to what these eclipses mean. November 19th, there is a lunar eclipse, and it's going to be the first in this series in this eclipse season. So eclipse seasons happen about every 6 months, and that is always when the sun is near one of these two nodes. All right, it's always at least 2 eclipses and sometimes 3 in an eclipse season. All right. So the lunar eclipse on November 19th, let's mark that date on your calendar, give it a little circle. That's the date when the moon will be full, sun opposite moon, and it will be kind of like an extra powerful full moon, an eclipse, because that sun moon is close to the nodes. This is going to be a north node eclipse. That means the moon at the time of the eclipse is located in conjunction with the north node. The north node is going to be in Gemini, but the eclipse is going to be in Taurus. So the north node here is at the beginning of Gemini at 0, 1 degrees Gemini. We're going to number all the degrees of the zodiac 0 through 29. So the 0, 1 is the 2nd degree of Gemini. This is just technical information. You don't have to stress about this. It's not going to impact your understanding of this at all. But for those who are curious, we're at the beginning of Gemini and the end of Taurus. And that means that this eclipse may kind of build a bridge between ideas, on the one hand, Gemini, and material that's going to ground us in the material. Finances, supplies, your garden, natural resources, earth changes, things like that. So what the eclipse season is going to do is it's going to kind of set the tone. It's going to set a tone that's going to carry us through to the very next eclipse season, which is about 6 months down the road. right? So that's that next eclipse season is going to happen when the sun is in Taurus, and that's going to be like around May. So springtime, we're going to have a new set of eclipses that is going to set the tone again. So the tone that we're setting in November and December will last until the tone changes again in May. The North Node, the fact that this is a North Node eclipse tells us that this is what's flowing in, and that we ought to be open to new ideas, especially about Taurus things. All right, the way that we spend our money, the way we garden, the way we think about finances and things, the way we think about our how we live on the earth, our use of natural resources. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm going to make a quick check of the chat every now and then. So if you have a question, if you want some clarification, then go ahead and type it in the chat, because I will refer to it every now and then. All right. And here's a picture of the solar eclipse. And the solar eclipse is a little bit more complicated, I think, due to the fact that the solar eclipse is taking place closer to the south node of the moon. So here's the south node of the moon, and it's in Sagittarius. Sag is a sign that has to do with reaching out beyond your comfort zone, beyond your borders. It's kind of the opposite, a very different idea than the Taurus, which is about staying in your comfort zone and kind of putting down roots and getting stable. This is more of a leaving your comfort zone, but it's a south node eclipse, and the south node tends to be where we overdo things. We do things a little bit too much, and the tide is flowing out here. And this gets really important when we start looking at the chart of the United States. So kind of bookmark that idea. On a personal level, these eclipses can give us a little bit of idea of or advice about what we can all work with, the energies that we can all work with over this next 6 months that is starting with this eclipse season. The south node being in Sagittarius and the solar eclipse being in Sagittarius kind of gives us an idea that we can process out, we can let go, we can reduce our reliance on our beliefs. We got to make room for our beliefs to be wrong, our beliefs to change, or there to be certain kinds of beliefs or judgments that we can leave behind or do without. You know, as these things leave our lives, they tend to they can produce chaos if we get wrapped up into them. And Sagittarius is sorry about that. Okay, and Sagittarius is all about how are we going to I totally lost my train of thought when my iPad blitzed like that. But Sagittarius tunes us into these things, our beliefs, our ability to manifest. And the fact that it's close to the south node this time means that we can overdo those things a bit. And we need to kind of think carefully and cautiously about things like thinking we know what's best for everybody. That's one of those things, judging people, telling other people what to do. With a Sagittarius south node, there's a real urge to be right and have the right ideas and the right things. And as this solar eclipse in Sagittarius really highlights that energy, this is something that can come up in the national conversation, kind of the world vibe, the weather vibe of the time. So I hope that makes some sense here. So what do we do? How do we work with this energy? How do we make the most of it? I think one of the best things that you can do during this time is go into listening mode. Go into listening mode. Embrace that North Node in Gemini and kind of be open to other people's perspectives without judging them, without filtering through your belief system. Just let other people talk and hear what they have to say. eclipses in the birth chart houses, visit this link. It's just a page on my website, and I can send it to you after this talk is over, or I will link it with the replay or something like that. But you can go there to kind of reference which house contains these degrees. The degree of the lunar eclipse, 27 degrees of Taurus, and the degree of the solar eclipse, which is 12 degrees Sagittarius. Find out what house that is in your birth chart, and that will tell you what areas of life are getting stirred up for you by this eclipse season, and where you're likely to see activities and significant events over the next 6 months. So let's get into the chart of the USA, because this to me is really, really exciting and interesting. Basically, what I've got here, this is what we call a bi-wheel in astrology. It's the United States of America chart, the most widely used chart of the United States, which is called the Sibley chart. And I have misspelled it here by accident. That E should not be there. It's S-I-B-L-Y chart. And it's for the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which this Sibley guy apparently was some of the signers, and created a chart for the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And to our best knowledge, this is the chart of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which would be the birth chart of the United States, because we have said, okay, we are no longer part of England. We are our own thing now. And so this is the most widely used chart of the United States, the Sibley chart. July 4th, 1776, about 5:10 in the afternoon in Philadelphia, which used to be the capital of the United States. The USA is a Cancer. All right. Mom and apple pie, really traditional, tends to be conservative, but at the same time, very likable. You know, Venus, Jupiter in Cancer, very likable. All right. What's really getting activated by these eclipses, though, is the moon. All right. The moon in a country chart represents the people. All right. So even though the national character is quite conservative and maybe resistant to change in some ways, traditional in a lot of ways, the people of the United States are like, they're Aquarius, like, don't tell us what to do. You know, I mean, who can relate to that? Don't tell us what to do. We do things our way. We're quite creative. We're very inventive. We are, you could say, technology addicts. Aquarius is a sign of technology. What I've got here is the USA chart in the middle, and I've got the chart of the lunar eclipse on the outside. And we can see that lunar eclipse is occupying the 6th house of the USA chart. This tells me that the issues that we're seeing in the labor market, the strikes that we're seeing in the labor force, the labor movement is not done yet. This will definitely be a defining force, I think, in the next 6 months. These strikes, and also the difficulty of finding service workers, healthcare workers. You know, we're kind of seeing a bit of a crisis in labor, and I think that is something that where we need a lot of new ideas. We need some new approaches, and we need some long-term sustainable approaches that really bring real tangible value in. The eclipse moon is exactly square the USA moon. All right. Here's the eclipse. Here's the moon at the time of the eclipse. Here is the moon in the USA chart. You can see that the moon is at 27. The moon is at 27. And that means it's a really, really close square. And this to me says the people, there's a lot of activity concerning the people of the United States, and the people will have a lot of say. I think the people are really motivated and really activated right now to achieve what they want, what their goals are and stuff. The moon represents the common people. women, families. The square represents tension. It says that there's tension in the picture. There's tension pointed at women, families. There's activity. There's stuff going on that impacts women and families a whole lot. And it's in the third house, which is kind of the everyday comings and goings of the nation. It also, the third house represents the postal service, the postal system. So I'm going to write that down there. Postal system. Whoops. And then we have the moon representing women and families. And the population. So you can say that this next 6 months, there's going to be some pressure there. The third house represents the postal system as well as transportation and all these things that are coming up more in the national dialogue as we try and get some kind of infrastructure sorted out for the country, right? And we can also see Jupiter over here. So here's transiting Jupiter, and it is also making contact with this moon. So Jupiter can disrupt things and kind of destructure them, disorganize things so that they have to kind of fall apart in a way almost and then come back together again. So hopefully this falling apart is not the end of the story, but there tends to be some issues that help you know that there are issues, if that makes sense. Another interesting connection to this, another interesting connection between the lunar eclipse and the USA chart is the lunar eclipse moon. Lunar eclipse moon also makes a connection to the USA Pluto. Pluto is very, very, very interesting in the USA chart in 2022. I'm working on a blog post about this, but this is a very rare event happening in 2022 for the United States, and it is Pluto return, a Pluto return. Human beings do not have Pluto returns because we don't live long enough. Pluto has a 248-year cycle, and then here we are as a nation. We're coming back and kind of coming to a reckoning with our own Pluto, our national power, our shadows, our darkness, our Pluto, our underworld. So that's just a preview of coming attractions. I could do a whole other talk just on that Pluto return because it's really interesting and it's a very big deal. All right, so here is the same biwheel, United States of America chart in the middle, and the solar eclipse chart on the outer wheel. There is a major, major, major connection between these two charts, and that is the ascendant. All right, this is one of the most important. This is the front door of the birth chart. It is a major important piece of any birth chart. Your ascendant is everything. It's your presence. It's physically how you show up. It's your identity. In the chart of the United States, the ascendant degree is 12 Sagittarius. And look at the degree of this eclipse. 12 Sagittarius. It is right there. It is bang on the ascendant of the United States. And this to me says the next 6 months, this country is really going to be dealing with some questions around identity. Who are we? What is our basic nature? Sag on the ascendant, we're a nation of immigrants. Sag on the ascendant, we're also a nation of religious people. Not everybody, not every individual in the United States, but there's a lot of Puritanism that founded this country and is still present in our laws, and there is a lot of belief there's a lot of beliefs to our national identity that certain people don't want challenged, so there's a lot of tension within this eclipse, and there is a huge activation around the United States national identity, the national character. Now I'm going to read you from some of my resources. The Ascendant is about the national character, race and race relationships. And this is really interesting in light of the election that just happened yesterday here in Virginia, where I live. The new governor, the governor that just got elected, a Republican guy, billionaire guy, really made the voting. They made the race about race and identity, and really took advantage of some of the fears that a lot of white people have about people of color becoming a majority. They're very afraid of the demographic change in this country, and they're really and the new governor-elect really exploited that. So, we're seeing not only that it's being activated, but it's being utilized. This is temporary. This is not all the time, but we can definitely see that being a factor now and playing out over the next 6 months. We can see another connection between the ruling planet of Sagittarius, which is, if you've taken any of my beginning astrology classes, my free classes, or my beginner class, we talk a little bit about finding out more about something in a chart by looking at its ruler. So the ascendant's in Sagittarius, and that's the territory of Jupiter. So Jupiter would be the ruling planet of this eclipse. And we can see Jupiter right here, kind of, again, in touch with the USA moon. Yeah. So again, we're seeing disruptions and disorganization around the communication systems, the third house kinds of things in the country, the postal system. That's kind of an ongoing story that's really interesting. The legal system, the Supreme Court. That's another Sagittarian idea, another Jupiter idea. So that too can be a front burner issue, with something that we're thinking a lot more about and talking a lot more about in the next 6 months. And isn't it interesting, as these things move through the sign of education, that we're having these debates about whether we're going to teach the children the truth about history in school? So I told you guys I would go into the sorrow cycle, and that's really interesting. What I like to do is when I have an eclipse, I look it up in a resource called Predictive Astrology by Bernadette Brady. Bernadette Brady has done the work of delineating every series of eclipses. Now, this gets really long and really technical, but basically, when an eclipse happens, it's not a singular event. It's related to other eclipses throughout time. And every eclipse belongs to a family of eclipses. And these eclipses will recur about every 18 years over periods of hundreds of years. So this particular eclipse is part of a family called Saros Series 5 South. And Bernadette Brady has done the work in her book of breaking down the charts of the beginnings of all of these series, and giving us a characterization of what that eclipse family is about. And for the longest time, going up through about 2020, the predictions were really dire. The families, it was like they were really mean, awful families of eclipses. And this one is actually not that bad. What she says about it is, this is a very joyful, happy family of eclipses. There is a sense of good news, of falling in love, a peak experience that is joyful in some way. The benefits that appear in the individual's life under this eclipse series can be expected to continue well after the eclipse has passed. So on an individual, I don't know about a national level, We'll see. We'll see. I mean, we should look to kind of the labor movement, the sixth house and the first house, the labor of the country, the working people of the country, and the national identity. Those are going to be really important themes over the next 6 months. And we'll look for something happy. And then go into your chart and look at what house that eclipse occupies in your chart, and go over to my list that I'm going to send you later, that I'll link down with this video, and you can see the houses that is expected to touch in your chart. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah. I'm hoping like this, maybe because I'm a Sag rising, but I always look at things, the glass is half full. And with all the Sagittarian energy and where Jupiter is, I'm hoping that energy is more jovial, more uplifting. Jupiter expands certain energies. So that's my perspective anyway. But also the numerology is kind of interesting. When you add things together, I'm seeing numbers of like service, of endings, of connecting in relationships. And we have the possibility of like kind of having a stalemate or taking that energy and creating something better. So hopefully when the lighter stuff will happen, because I think everybody's just exhausted from being down in the doldrums.
For real. Yeah. And I mean, from a certain perspective, our situation looks desperate. There's a minority trying to grab power away from the majority, and it's dire. And what's going to be required is for people, for Jupiter to hit the moon. Jupiter expands, everything is touches. And, we need a large movement of people saying, no, that's not okay.
Yeah. And Jupiter, Aquarius can be rebellious and eccentric and all that stuff. So hopefully the rebellion is in the right direction, but we're seeing other directions as well.
We sure are. Yeah. And if we talk a little bit about kind of what we're going through as a nation in terms of transits and the weather transits, the defining story, the defining scandal of 2021 has been Saturn square Uranus. We've had 3 hits of Saturn square Uranus. One of them hit real close to the January 6th insurrection. Ugly. The other one hit a little bit later. We had another sort of minor hit, what we call the heliocentric hit in October. And then December, we're going to have that final pass of Saturn square. I mean, Saturn's moving in a 90-degree angle to Uranus. Saturn is the structure, the rules, the old guard, and Uranus is the middle fingers and the forces that want to disrupt the game board, to reset things and to upset the game for good or for ill. With the energy of a square, it's usually pretty tense, and that has been the story of 2020. I'm sorry, 2021. 2020 story was really interesting too, because that was when Saturn met up with Pluto, the god of the underworld, in the sky. And I just read the other day, someone wrote about this, and he called it the Great Compression. I wish that I had come up with that, and I wish I had read that sooner, because that is a wonderful way to describe what we went through in 2020, and that is, kind of what the planets were telling us too. When we get to 2022, the astrological weather, the overall weather clears out quite a bit. We don't have nearly as much, really hard-hitting planets hitting other planets in the sky as we did in 2020 and 2021. But what we have in 2022 is the USA Pluto return.
Yeah, I think that's enough.
That's enough, right? We don't need more than that, because you're right. That's plenty enough. Plenty enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this might be a little off, but when do the nodes move into Taurus and Scorpio?
Oh gosh, they're so close now that it won't be long. Let me check.
Okay.
Sometime around the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't have that exact date right
Okay. Yeah. I was just feeling like a lot of that Scorpio energy with Pluto and the node, the south node moving into Scorpio. So more to think about, more transformation, or maybe we can stop transforming. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what that says to me is the north nodes are going to change sign. The north node and the south node are a pair, and they change signs at the same time. Just for all of you that aren't familiar with them, they move backwards at the rate of one complete circle through all 12 signs of the zodiac every approximately 18 years. All right. So the nodes are moving backwards. And this means that the north node here at 0 Gemini and the south node here at 0 of Sagittarius are near the end of their journey through that sign. And then they will move into the end degrees of Taurus and Scorpio and kind of proceed backwards through those degrees. But with Gemini and Sag, we're in the realm of ideas. And the way to kind of reach out and grow is to listen, rather than kind of teach or preach or, think that you've got all the answers and you've got everything right. And you're going to tell everybody what to do. To really just open your ears and listen to what's going on. Let new ideas flow in instead of letting old beliefs stand in the way of you getting new ideas. The new ideas that are really going to nourish your growth. It's true for all of us individually. And where this impacts for you in your life is going to be dependent on where that occurs in your personal birth chart. All right. Okay. And then when we move back, when we proceed back through Taurus and Scorpio, we move into the realm of the material, how we use resources, investments, how we use power. And the answers, the way forward, the path to growth is to become more grounded, is to simplify. We don't need all that extra stuff. We need to become more sustainable. We need to start caring for our planet and our earth. We need to think about being more connected to the source of our physical wellness, our food, for example, our heat, our light, the things that we need in order to physically survive on this planet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I always appreciate your comments, and I hadn't thought about the numerology. Was that the 12 that's standing out to you? Or?
Yeah, the 12, adding that up to 3. So creativity and coming together. And then I'm thinking of tarot. It's the Hanged Man. So we can also change our perspective too.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So, 27, 9, service to others. 25 is 7. Oh gosh, what's the 7th tarot card? It's not strength. Sometimes they flip-flop, if anybody can remember. Hermit. That's not the Lovers. Whatever is after the Lovers, I can't remember right now off the top of my head. But then 7 is like the relationships, like the 7th house and things like that. So,
oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Lots to always with these charts. There's so much to think about and to see, but it's amazing how it all will line up and support all the other energies that are going on. So yeah.
Lots to contemplate.
Okay. The number 7 tarot card is the Chariot.
Oh yes. Okay. It's moving. eight that is strength. Is that right?
Yeah. So something's moving.
Yeah. The Chariot is moving.
Right.
That makes sense. And that would be the ruling planet, Jupiter, giving us that 7, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Margaret, does this look like the dark side of Sag? Misinformation, thinking my way of thinking is the only way to anyone else. Okay, and then she gave us a link to Rachel Maddow. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the misinformation to me is I'm really seeing that in this didn't really come up as part of the eclipse matrix, but I think it is a really important part of what's happening in the USA today. And that is, let me just get back to my little scratch pad here. And that's Neptune. Oh. Neptune here. Okay. Neptune is in Pisces. Pisces is Neptune's ruling sign. So Neptune is it operates about as freely in Pisces, does whatever it wants in Pisces, has a lot of power in Pisces. And Neptune is the energy of illusion, deception, infection, those kinds of things. And look at the USA chart and how this all fits in, because in the chart of the USA itself, Mars is here, Mars in the 7th house. So, we love having enemies to fight, right? We love that. But Mars is square Neptune here. Mars square Neptune. When COVID first started, one of my teachers, one of my mentors, Lynn Coiner, did a little study. And she said that the markers for someone who's really susceptible to getting COVID would be a connection between Mars and Jupiter in the birth chart. Well, look at the United States. We have this connection between Mars and Jupiter. Did I say Jupiter? Mars and Neptune in the birth chart. Mars and Neptune. In the chart of the United States, Mars and Neptune square each other. And then here's transit Neptune, square Mars and opposite Neptune on the birth chart. So this too is an ongoing process that seems really highly linked in this very confusing approach that the United States has taken to COVID and this and just the really frustrating experience that we've had with it, where the truth is really hard to find. And there's not a lot of consistency. It's very mutable in its expression because this is happening in mutable signs. Pisces is mutable, Gemini is mutable, Virgo is mutable. So Neptune kind of just throws a big pile of confusion in the middle of all of that. But the good news is once Neptune kind of moves on, we can move on to other things. one of my therapists way back, she said the reason that we do therapy is so that we can stop doing the same old damn things and we can move on to new damn things. So this is it. We're moving on to new damn things. Bad news is that the last time that Neptune moved into Aries, the last time Neptune was in the sign Aries was around the Civil War.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's when we had a civil war here. And to be here in the South and to see what's going on here and to follow the news and the trials and the new Nazi people who are trying to become a political force in the United States. Mm-hmm. That's very concerning. That's very concerning. In light of that, because they seem really hell-bent on starting a new civil war. Like they seem to really like that idea.
Yeah, they bring it up quite a bit. And I think the regular folks don't want that. Like, I hope that the majority doesn't want that. Yeah, it's tricky when this kind of white supremacist energy has just been embedded into our country. And so it's hard to get it out, even if you're arresting people or voting people out. It's still, with a voter suppression and those things, it's tricky.
And that's where I'm really seeing that Pluto return come to the that again is a big force that I could talk about forever, because that's really bringing up our national shadows.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I'm ready to hear you talk all about that. So on the next live or write that up.
Yeah, if I ever get the courage to do this again. but I am working on a written version of that. And so that should be out in the next few weeks, I hope. But that's going to be the defining story of 22 for us. And, let's all say a prayer that we come through it as peacefully as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that most of us want that,
Yeah, nobody wants to see anybody die.